Parks and Rec Board meeting of August 21st, 2012. First order of business, we have some new board members that I'd like to introduce. First, Dan Jasica joins us tonight. Dan, would you like to say a few words about your background?
Sure, I'm pleased to be serving on the board. Moved to Lake Forest in 1996. My wife is a physician here in town. I've got 3 kids, one who just bought books. She's going to be a freshman at the high school, 2 who are starting 5th grade. I work for the Lake County State's Attorney's Office, and I was previously on the Zoning Board of Appeals, so this is a very different and fresh perspective that I hope to bring. So, thanks.
Great, welcome.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to working with you. Second new member here tonight is our student member, Daniel Saffrin. Daniel?
Hi, I'm Daniel. I've lived here my whole life. I'm 17, I'm going to be a senior, and I work at the Lake Forest Club as a camp counselor. And yeah, interviewed to get this, and I got it, so I'm really excited.
Welcome aboard, Daniel. Okay, next item, opportunities for the public to address the board on items not listed on the agenda. Do we have, Lauren, you want to come up? Okay. Do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda? Very good, we'll move on. Next item, approval of the May 18th, 2012 board minutes. I do have one minor correction, Trish. You showing me as the chairman? Technically, Robin was still the chairman at that meeting, so that's the only correction I have. Any other? Need a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The minutes are passed. All right, next item is an update on the bicycle master plan from Megan O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman Volkmann, board members. My name is Megan O'Neill. I'm a planner with the City of Lake Forest Community Development Department. I'm very excited to be here this evening to update you on some of the key concepts and ideas that have been developed through the public process for the bicycle master plan. Let's see if I know how to work this. There we go. The process started in the fall of 2011 after several residents expressed interest in making the community a more bike-friendly place to be. The City Council directed staff to facilitate the development of a bicycle master plan, and at that time, a project team consisting of staff from community development, parks and recreation, engineering, and public safety was formed. And we've been collaborating with other community and regional partners such as Lake Forest Open Lands, Lake County DOT, and the Village of Lake Bluff. Actually, let's back up. The concepts that I want to present to you this evening are a result of the public input that we've received from a community survey that was conducted late last year, public workshops and meetings, as well as conversations with a resident focus group. And we recently had a public open house a couple weeks ago. So we've been continuing to gather input, working our way towards the development of a draft plan. At this point, we're finalizing our public input and presenting to you, the Parks and Recreation Board, to get input from your perspective and to hear any additional comments or ideas that you have that may not have been specifically brought forth at this point. Moving forward, the bicycle master plan, in full or in part, will be considered by the Plan Commission and ultimately the City Council as part of an update to the transportation section of the city's comprehensive plan. So just a little background of what is a bicycle master plan. The simple answer to that question is it's a way to identify a bicycle network and plan for future improvements. But what many bicycle advocates and other communities have found is that a bicycle master plan is actually much more than that. The catchphrase for most of these master plans is to include the 5 E's of bike planning. So our plan hopes to address the 5 E's, which are engineering, what are you going to build, education, teaching people to share the road, encouragement, getting people excited about bicycling, enforcement, enforcing the rules of the road, and evaluation. Our hope is really to develop a dynamic document that can be revisited over time and as components of the plan are implemented to ensure consistency with the vision for Lake Forest and the overall comprehensive plan for the city of Lake Forest. we're creating a master plan as an implementation tool. It allows us to think broadly and plan for improvements within the city limits that make sense locally, but also regionally. One primary reason for the bicycle master plan, and ultimately updating the comprehensive plan, is to raise awareness of bicycling and really highlight the importance of a healthy amenity in Lake Forest. The most obvious benefit to me, I guess, of an established bicycle network is connecting people to key destinations within the community. Those destinations include recreational destinations such as parks. In addition to that, studies have shown that bicycling has positive impacts on health, the environment, as well as economic development. One of the recurring themes that came from the public input for the master plan is that Lake Forest and Lake Bluff region really has a lot of good assets. The existing recreational trails in Lake Forest primarily run north and south, and they include the McClory Bike Path along the Union Pacific Railroad tracks on the east side of Lake Forest, and the Skokie Valley Bike Path that runs along Highway 41. There's also an east-west bike path along Route 176 north of Lake Forest. In addition to those off-road trails, Lake Forest also has numerous low-traffic, low-speed streets that are suitable for bicycling and contribute to the existing bicycle network in the community. It's important to recognize this because if bikes are really to become a viable transportation option in Lake Forest, the network needs to go where the cars go. And for the average adult rider, riding on the street is actually safer than riding on the sidewalk. So that brings us to some of the key issues that were identified through the public process so far. These include a lack of safe east-west connections, the need for better awareness and encouragement for cyclists to share the road with motorists, the need for improved bicycle parking at key destinations, and a strong desire to improve the access to the central business district and train stations. So through the public process and the work with the resident focus group, 5 primary goals were established to set the framework for the master plan. I believe the goals were distributed to the board in advance, so just briefly, the goals are to generate awareness and acceptance of bicycling in Lake Forest, to connect major destinations within Lake Forest and facilitate access to the established regional network, to provide safe transportation options for people of all ages and physical abilities in Lake Forest, to protect the environment for the long term by promoting bicycling as a viable transportation choice in Lake Forest, and to promote bicycling as a healthy, safe, convenient, and enjoyable means of transportation and recreation. So in order to accomplish those goals, the focus group helped the project team establish a toolkit for Lake Forest that includes signage to identify and direct bicyclists, pavement markings to help bikes and cars share the road, pathways along major roadways when appropriate and safe, as well as the need to maintain and enhance the existing pathway system that we have. So those tools can be used to improve key connections identified at the public workshops. As money becomes available and individual components of the plan come forward, these particular routes will be evaluated and considered for enhancements and improvements for bicycle safety and connectivity. So it's kind of hard to see on this graphic, but the primary connection opportunities are along east-west corridors in Lake Forest. They include the Everett-Old Elm Corridor, Wesley Road, Route 60, and then connections between the 2 bike paths that we have. So as I mentioned earlier, the Bicycle Master Plan is really a framework to guide future development. I'd like to share a quick example of how the master plan can guide new improvements. Improving bike connectivity and parking in the central business district has consistently been identified throughout the process as a key issue. Concurrent with the development of the Bicycle Master Plan, the city has actually applied for and received partial grant funding to improve the connection and bike parking along the McClory Trail, which runs through our central business district. The grant funding already received will allow for improved covered bike parking at the East Lake Forest train station, and the hope is to increase the scope of that project to include continuation of the bike path between Woodland and Illinois roads along the West Parkway of McKinley. The current condition here in the downtown area, if any of you are cyclists know, routes the cyclists through the parking lots. And that was really identified as a hazard through the public meeting process. Input and comments received through the master planning process that we've gone through this far will be incorporated into the final plans as the grant is further developed down the road. So I really think this is a good opportunity to see how the master plan and some of the ideas of connection can really come together in the near future for the community. So finally, just to reiterate the process moving forward, the project team is looking for input from the Parks and Recreation Board so that all of the information gathered can be incorporated into a draft master plan, which will be presented to the Plan Commission for consideration as an update to the city's comprehensive plan. The master plan is a high-level document. It guides future projects, and as funds become available, individual components may be brought back to different boards and commissions as appropriate, but the master plan really helps to define the vision for bicycling in Lake Forest. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll end my presentation with a question that we posed to residents at the community open house a couple weeks ago, is what really makes a community a bike-friendly place? We really hope to capture the ideas that came from that public meeting, and if you have any additional ones to share, we hope to incorporate those into the master plan. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Megan. Questions, comments?
I just have a quick question. You said that we received partial funding. Are there time constraints within which we need to work or specific goals that it hits?
With respect to the grant for the Central Business District, the initial grant that we applied for was for bicycle parking. So we've received that grant. Since then, in developing where the best location is, how best to accommodate bicycle parking in that area, the scope really has increased to include the connectivity between the two bridges. So that part of the grant is not funded yet, but we are in the process of applying for it and hope to receive that money soon.
Okay. But we won't lose it for not using it straight away?
Correct. We're not in danger of losing any money that's been awarded to us.
Great. Thank you.
Megan, I have a couple questions. There were some designations in the material that you sent ahead of time that I was not familiar, am not familiar with. And it's in the section on the goals. One of them is to be recognized as a bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists. What do we have to do to achieve that recognition?
The League of Illinois Bicyclists or American Bicyclists does offer an award system for communities that create enhancements for bicyclists in the town. The framework of the 5 E's really sets up a community to receive awards such as that, showing that you're encouraging residents, you're educating, you have an engineered plan in place, and that you're following through, that you're evaluating it continually to make sure that it's consistent with the needs of the community and the plans that are in place.
So by implementing the elements of the plan, that would make us eligible to receive that
That would be the goal.
recognition. Okay, good. And there's another one under safety, achieve a bicycle level of service rating of C or higher on residential streets. What does that entail?
Sure. Bicycle level of service is one of the accepted tools available to us to evaluate the suitability of a street for cycling. So how comfortable do people feel riding on the street? Numerous studies have found that people feel most comfortable on a suitability of C or better. It's a B, C, D, or fail scale. So the goal would be to enhance the street system in key areas that have been identified to raise that level of compatibility for bicycling.
So it'd be things like dedicated bike lanes and better signage and what other kinds of things?
Exactly. So the tools that we've identified actually all help to raise the level of service for bicycling. You could easily raise the level of service of a street from a C to a B simply by putting a sign up, depending on the other conditions. It's an algorithm that you plug in the numbers of how wide a street is, how many cars travel, how fast they're going, to determine what the level of service is. So those tools are used to improve the level of service.
So can you give us an example? I live in the south part of town and I'm on Old Elm often, and Sundays are probably the worst day. in the sense of it being a driver when there's bikes everywhere. And the bikers tend to not follow the traffic. You know, they don't stop at the stop sign, they just blow through the lights. It's a pretty narrow street. Give us some examples of things that we might consider doing on that corridor, which is a good east-west one, to achieve these things that you've set out here. What do we have in mind?
Well, I think education is probably a big piece of that, is learning what the rules of the road are and how many people can ride across and where to ride on the street. But in order to actually stripe a lane on Old Elm, that road would have to be widened. So there needs to be further evaluation as the next step of this master plan to determine really what are the priorities and how can we accomplish these level of service. So that's kind of the next step, is to take all this information that we've gathered and really look at what is a feasible way to improve the bicycle level of service on these streets. The master plan is identifying which routes to focus on. So if there's a road improvement in the future on Old Elm, are there opportunities to widen it? Does that make sense? Is that the best choice, for all aspects of that roadway improvement? But it does give us the ability to say, this was identified as important. Let's look at it closely moving forward.
Okay, great. And just one more question. Who maintains the paths today? The McCrory and the Skokie Valley?
I believe it's the city of Lake Forest.
And it's the Parks and Recreation Department.
And but it must stop at the Lake Bluff
Yes,
border, and
correct.
they take it from
We just
there?
maintain our section.
Okay. Good. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I have one. How about Deerpath? Because it's pretty narrow, and I always see bicyclists there, and it's hard to get around them, especially on Deerpath.
It's a great question. Deerpath is certainly one of those streets that everyone wishes we could have a bike lane or some sort of designated path for cyclists. I think it's probably the most challenging in the community. What the residents have brought forward in their ideas are some alternative routes. We did a survey that indicated that people were willing to take the long way around to get to a destination. So there are some routes identified that kind of bypass Deerpath but still allow people to access some of the amenities on that route.
Megan, I know you've been working on this for several years, because I remember when you first announced to the board that I was serving on that you were undertaking this, so it's great to see this actually coming to fruition, so thank you for all of your work.
Thanks.
Are we basically looking at the proposed plan to be adopted into the city's comprehensive plan, or is there still another phase, which is, as you mentioned, identifying the feasible, practical, physical improvements that can be made to achieve these goals?
Right now, what we've put together are some key concepts that we know we want to put forth into the draft master plan. So right now we're looking for input and comments from the Parks and Recreation Board, but there is still further synthesis and development of the actual draft document to take to the Plan Commission.
So this is not the plan that ultimately the Plan Commission and the City Council will be approving. That's going to be a further evaluation of more specific proposals and improvements that down the road, if money becomes available and opportunities exist, would be brought to fruition?
Correct. I did bring a slide. This is kind of a sample idea of what could be placed in the plan. That's a little bit more further analysis of a specific corridor. For Route 60, for instance, the master plan identifies Route 60 as a key corridor. It's a good connector out west. It doesn't say exactly how it's going to be developed into a bicycle plan. It says, these are some ideas, some concepts that, when somebody goes and does work on that area, let's evaluate it and look closer at it. But the master plan also has another level to it of creative opportunities. So it identifies connections that enhance those more direct routes. So I think this kind of work still needs to be done on a lot of the corridors that we've identified. ideally, a lot of these concepts will be incorporated into the final document. But I think in terms of prioritizing and really getting into the nitty-gritty of what happens where, that
Yeah.
still is to come.
And is that to come prior to it going to the city council and the plan commission?
That will be what's presented to the Plan Commission.
Okay.
Because ultimately, that's what will go into the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
That'll be part of that amendment or update.
Thank you.
Other
Can I just
thoughts?
add, I thought one of the things, was really, we want to encourage especially the youth in the community to enjoy the parks and be able to get to the parks and things like that. So I think this is a plan that really will benefit a lot of our recreational interests. And just adding the small connection piece we did at Waveland recently to the drive that came from the east, and we connected it actually to the actual pavilion in the building, so you could ride then on out. Just that little piece helped, but we'd love to take our paths and continue them across the park and take them to these thoroughfares that, would be designated as safe bike routes. So the more that we can work with that type of thing on our side as part of the comprehensive bike plan too, those are the kinds of things that give us those opportunities. We know where they're headed with the big street improvements. Is there park properties in the in the middle of that we can do something small as well, just to make all the connections happen. So I think it's gonna be pretty exciting to get the concepts all identified.
Yeah.
So
And I could even see a component of the master plan identifying that as a highlight. Connections to parks is an important asset for the community. So.
Can I ask one more
Sure,
follow-up question? To what extent in any of the working groups or focus groups were we sort of engaging what I'll call hardcore bicyclists out there who, I don't know if they're from Lake Forest or other communities, they seem to know where they're going. I have no idea where they're going, but they seem to have a path that they are preferring to take for one reason or another. And I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing is sort of taking that into account.
Certainly. The focus group and meetings that we've held have had a wide range of people. People wanting to get to the store, people who are riding for long ride recreation routes, people riding with clubs. So I do think there's been a pretty good representation of cyclists in the community.
Thank you.
So related to that, Megan, I think a lot of this information that's in the maps and, showing where all the trails are and everything, that's fantastic to get out there. And I can envision on our website, Bike Lake Forest, and somebody can click on if doesn't know where all these little hidden connection points are. I know where they are because I've stumbled across them over the years, but I think it would be great to get this information publicly available if possible.
And there's, to that point, there's also grant funding available through a Bike to Metro program where the community can actually get printed maps of their bike plan made as part of this
We don't
idea.
want paper, we want it on the website.
Well, both. It's
okay.
actually both. It's an electronic and a map for the train stations to
great.
get people to travel by bike and train. So.
Very good. Thoughts? Okay, thank you, Megan.
Thanks.
Next item is from Chuck, an update on the Parks and Forestry activities.
Good evening. I'm here to talk to you about a couple of the projects we're working on and then give you some updates in the parks themselves. The first one is the Route 60 corridor, and that is the median plan that we're working on. That's from I-94 to Academy Road. And as you know, there was a lot of work to get a prairie-style planting going over there, and that was going on for the last couple of years. And this summer, in July, we decided to take a new direction on it. So we have been mowing them down. The prairie and weeds and all that have been mowed down on a regular basis. So we're trying to keep it looking halfway decent while we develop a plan. So right now, we're in the middle of some of the site assessment. We've done soil tests. We've done tree assessment out there. We're gathering the information, and we're also working with a landscape architect to put together a final plan. So right now, we have been meeting with them. We have a preliminary plan that we're working on. They're putting together some costs we're looking at various different aspects to get this going in the fall. Our plan is to start construction in the fall, probably at the end of September into October. We'd like to get a lot of the non-planting things done before the winter. And then in the spring, we would be following up with a lot of the planting. There's a lot to it, a lot more than may appear when you look at it. There are some soil issues that we need to take care of. There'll be some excavation, I'm fairly certain. So we'll be doing quite a bit of work to make sure we have correct costs and all that kind of thing over the next couple weeks. So the second thing I want to talk to you about is a quick update on Town Line with our playground construction. It has been going well. I will say that it seemed like the rain started right when we started this project though. So we had that dry spell. We weren't working on this. We couldn't start it. And then come July, we got the rain. So we have had a few setbacks due to the area being too wet. We had to excavate out. You can see in the corner there, the little puddle there. At times that was bigger after some of those big rains. It's because there's a walkway there and it's preventing drainage. So we have all of the equipment installed other than the swings and things like that. All the concrete and footings are in place. We are now waiting for the contractor to pour the curbing, and then once that's done, the poured in place will go in. So we were scheduled for early this week. They haven't been out there yet, but I know they're a little bit behind because of some of the rains on their other projects. So we're hopeful that we'll see them out there pouring the curbs this week, and then the poured in place will follow as soon as that's all dried, cured, all that. So we still would like to see this done by the end of August, with the exception of some of the landscaping. We're going to try to get quite a bit of it done right away, but we'll be waiting on some of the trees until later in the fall when it's better for the trees to be moved. So that's the playground.
Hey Chuck,
Yeah.
I went by the park today and it looks
Yeah.
fantastic.
Great.
I noticed there was a fence around it. I assume that's because there's still mud or.
Yeah, we've had a fence up. You can't see it very well, but it is there still. We put it up there for safety concerns when we were in the construction phase.
So given our history of drainage challenges at Town Line, does that puddle suggest that we're going to have more issues?
Well, fortunately, the poured in place, the water will sheet off of it.
To where though?
Go across there. So we
There's
did.
a wetland right there, isn't there?
On the other side, yeah.
So it'll go across the
Good size.
sidewalk to the wetland?
Yeah,
Great.
well, it will. It'll go across. It does sheet off. It's not permeable, so the water does sheet across. by
Part of the
design.
challenge was the construction took this down to the hard pan, so there's
Right.
no absorption of the rain when it hits, it just holds it. You know,
Yeah.
there's no soil between that, so they've had to pump it out a few times just to keep
Right.
the ground.
Yeah,
solid.
and I would say that, it's the same as a lot of Town Line that you're well aware of, with the drainage issues. Just to the north of there, it's the same kind of hard pan, which is actually what this slide is. So that's where we did the drill and fill, and that was just an update on that. We are feeling pretty good about the results there, but we're not done yet. The grass, we did have some struggles with this summer, to be honest. It was difficult early on. We're now starting to get things going pretty well. Part of the problem was we couldn't use our irrigation. We needed to get fertilizer down, all that kind of stuff. So it was a difficult year, but it's looking really good right now. It's draining well, and as I said a few months ago, the key right now is getting the turf well established. We will go back and look at supplementing with Turfus, the product we use that we injected. We'll be continuing to put that down, and we'll continue to work on the turf. But I'm happy to say it looks really good right now, and it's draining well. It's very playable after rain. So the last thing I want to talk about are some of the park improvements. I know that you're well aware of some of the bigger projects like the playground at Waveland, the playground at Town Line, and some of those type things. But our crews have been busy with many different projects outside of their regular maintenance tasks that we do every day. So I wanted to bring a few of those to your attention, starting with over the winter, we did a lot of bathroom improvements, a lot of the partitions at a number of our parks, Waveland, Northcroft. In particular, we actually did some floor epoxy, some painting. We painted a number of the bathrooms throughout our park system. We also installed some automatic bathroom locks at Town Line and Everett, and that was mainly to save people having to go out and unlock them. They're on a timer now, so it keeps people off of the path. It keeps them from having to go back there and lock and unlock the doors. So also with our athletic fields, we've had a number of ballparks that we have re-edged. We've done some concrete players areas like this one with the dugout fences and new benches. That happened at Waveland, at Deerpath, and then also a new home run screen and top rail padding at Everett. There's another one of our improvements. That's at Deerpath, and this is some of the edging. They had been getting to the point where a lot of the edges were lost, the grass was growing in, so we're starting to get a pretty good handle on that. I will say that we're not done. This is something that we have to keep up, and we do have plans of continuing that type work. We also have some of the dugouts that need to be improved. We're trying to get those somewhat standardized. We like what we put in at Deerpath. That's kind of the model that we're using right now. It's fairly simple and it's easy to maintain. In addition to that, we've also done the sidewalk and the new steps. That's not what this is a picture of, obviously, but at the tennis court at Northcroft, if you recall, there was a retaining wall there that was in pretty bad shape. We took that out, regraded it, added new steps to the tennis area, and put down new sod. I don't think there's a picture of that in here. No. But also we did a parking lot resurfacing at West Park and at Waveland. Waveland, as you know, had all kinds of things going on. This is actually that connection path that Mary spoke about earlier. Is fairly heavily used. People like it. It's a connection between the pavilion area and the rest of the park. Let's see. There's the parking area that was recently repaved at Waveland, and a number of landscaping projects out there. That's one of them. You can see the playground is off in the corner in the back, but we had to redo that whole area. It's now a picnic grove where the old playground used to be. The other improvements, some miscellaneous things, we did replace all of the old light fixtures down at Forest Park on the walkway. There were about 30 of them. We changed those to LED. They're much more energy efficient light. We also relocated the power panel and the overhead power lines at West Park. If you recall, those were kind of out of place because the houses that used to be there, they ran right through the park. We buried that line, which was always kind of an eyesore, but it's also nice because of the Lake Forest days. We were able to get equipment in there, have new paths for the vendors, and we were able to finish that just before that went on. So a number of different projects that are going on. There's a lot more that we're doing, and we'll continue into the fall. We do have plans to regrade and sod the infields at Everett, rebuild some pitcher's mounds and that kind of thing. So a lot going on in addition to the regular things that keep us very busy. Any questions?
In terms of the Route 60 beautification, I mean, I'm not telling you anything anybody doesn't already know, which is obviously I hear a fair amount of criticism of that area. Do we have to coordinate with IDOT in terms of what we're doing out there? Or are they pretty much good with whatever we want to do?
We did have a permit for the original work, because it is a state highway, of course. We're still under that, but we will be working with them and talking to them about possible lane closures. We're trying not to go outside of the permit. You know, we're not doing anything radical. We're just enhancing the landscape that's out there. We are enhancing it in a big way. You know, we're not going to keep the current plants out there, but as far as major, you know, we're not changing the lanes or anything, so we will need to work with them.
So we don't envision like a 9-month approval process while they look at what
We
we're
definitely
proposing.
don't want that.
Right.
And Dan, can I just add to that, we also have a letter that we worked out with them about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, that we took over the maintenance of the actual landscape component of it. So with that agreement, it's kind of like our responsibility, and
Okay.
they've already agreed that we can do work in those areas, so.
And just a more general question, and I
Yeah.
apologize if this is common knowledge to everybody else, but is that sort of a unique project that Parks and Rec is taking over? Or do you basically have jurisdiction and maintain all of the right-of-ways of all of the roadways throughout the city?
That is a good question, actually, and it is a bit of a gray area at times. I wouldn't say it's unique, because we do maintain a lot. We do a lot of work on parkways because the trees. We have the forestry end of things, so typically we have taken care of a lot of them. With this project, it's because originally the landscape, that prairie planting, was taken on by the Park and Rec Department. Mary can probably speak to why that was, but it was handed down because of that to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Other comments? Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Next item is a presentation by Tom Phelps. Tom approached us a couple months ago, having recently graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in environmental economics and policy. And Tom had some very good ideas about things we might consider doing with our parks in the city to make them more sustainable. And Chuck and I met with him a couple times and gave him some suggestions, one of which you'll hear from him tonight, which was to do kind of a baseline of what do we have out there in terms of size and energy usage and water consumption, et cetera. And Tom did this on his own time. He's a lifelong resident of Lake Forest, and it's his way of giving back to the community. So welcome, Tom.
All right, thank you, Chairman Volkmann and board members. So my goal with this presentation was to just provide a basic sustainability analysis for the park system, and including finding ways to increase the overall energy efficiency of the park facilities and reduce the facility's carbon footprint. Additionally, I'm going to provide examples of potential park improvements that will enhance the environmental quality of parks. So the parks we're going to go over are Everett Park, South Park, Northcroft, Waveland, Town Line, and Deerpath. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the energy efficiency of the building facilities themselves. So the first graph I have is natural gas consumption efficiency in clearance per square foot. And as you can see from this, Waveland Park is the most energy efficient and West Park is the least energy efficient from this. And then where is this natural gas going? It's going to heating. On the left, I have a picture of a furnace from Everett Park, and on the right is a water heater from Northcroft. Next, I have the electricity consumption efficiency for the different facilities in kilowatt hours per square foot. And from this, you can see that Everett Park is the most efficient, and again, West Park is the least efficient. Where's all this energy going to? It's going to lighting, to heating, and to the cooling systems. On the left, I have a picture from the Everett Park garage. That's a heating fan in the corner there. And then on the right is the air conditioning system at Northcroft. So just to give you a summary of that, so we have the average kilowatt hours per square foot for the facilities at around 13, and the average therms per square foot around 3. So then what I did was I took all that energy data and converted it to carbon dioxide emissions. And I did that through eGrid and then through a EPA inventory report on emissions. And basically what eGrid is it's a comprehensive database of the emission data from all the electricity produced in the United States, and then they break it down by regions. So this is based on our regional data. And from this, we have an average emissions from therms of about 19, and then average emissions from kilowatt hours at about 16. And this is just for these parks and this graph. And then I have my outlier of Deerpath Community Park at around 421 metric tons of CO2 from kilowatt hours. So just to give a summary of everything, so from electricity, we have 513.94 metric tons of CO2, which is equal to the annual greenhouse emissions from 101 passenger vehicles. Then from natural gas, we have 77.5 metric tons of CO2, and this is equal to the annual greenhouse gas emissions from 15.2 passenger vehicles. Next thing to talk about is water usage. So I found the water consumption efficiency by taking the meter data from all the parks and just dividing it by the waterable area in the parks. For Town Line, South Park, Northcroft, Waveland, and Deerpath, the efficiency is between like 0.6 to 2 gallons per square yard. And then for Everett and West Park, we have 50 gallons per square yard and 25 gallons per square yard. So total consumption for the parks was 2,208,900 gallons. And then 3,000 to 9,000 gallons of this were from faucet use per facility per year. 11,000 to 35,000 gallons a year were from toilet use per facility. But the majority of the water is going to irrigation and recreational purposes, specifically making ice skating ponds. One way we can reduce our water consumption in facilities is using low flow faucets. We can reduce from total consumption 0.24% to 0.72% annual savings. Using low flush toilets, we can have 0.63% to 1.9% annual savings. And these may seem like small numbers, but these are actually thousands and thousands of gallons. Another thing we can do is we can utilize a rain harvest system with an above ground rain silo that could store up to 10,000 gallons of rainwater for multi-purpose use. But overall, the biggest obstacle with water usage is finding ways to reduce the irrigation and recreational consumption by using sources of gray water, which is untreated water. Reducing electricity consumption for the facilities. We use direct LED FL lights instead of standard T8 fluorescent lights. We have an average savings of 175.2 kilowatt hours annually per facility, with 1,051.2 kilowatt hours annual savings across all facilities. The majority of the energy consumption for the facilities is going to heating and cooling systems. One way we can reduce the heating usage is lower the water heating temperature and use heat traps and insulating jackets to reduce energy usage by 10%. We have an average savings of 4,900 therms of natural gas for the park systems, which comes out to $2,600 at 2011 rates, and a reduction of 25 tons of CO2 emissions total. Reducing energy usage for cooling, we can keep the thermostat at 78 degrees or above, ensure that all the windows are sealed, and reduce the leakages. And then another thing is to keep all the south-facing windows unobstructed to gain as much natural heating as possible. And then the last thing I want to do was just to provide you with an example of just different improvements we can make to the parks in terms of environmental quality. So for the two highlighted areas, and then there's two areas around the parking lot, If we converted those to prairie grassland, it comes out to 2.3 acres. If we converted those to prairie grassland, we could reduce the water usage of the park by at least 6,200 gallons a year. And then the wetland areas to the south and to the east of the parks, those are currently, they're wetlands, but they're not really wetlands. They're more just a collection of cattails. And if we improve these areas, we could increase the biodiversity of the park and just make the park much more rich in terms of environmental quality. And then the last thing I had was to improve the water quality of the pond. We improved the vegetation around the edge of the pond and improve the water quality of the pond itself. We could put fish in it, and that would not only improve the environmental quality of the park, but it would also bring more people to the park. People will come there to fish. So the thing I want to ask of the board is that you use this information for informational purposes to maybe influence you to make changes to the park system and just try to make the park system more environmentally sustainable.
Nice work.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I know I saw a preview of this data, but it's striking to me again how West Park is the outlier for gas, electricity, and water.
Right.
I get water, because that's, as you say, where we
Right.
flood for the ice rink in the winter.
Right.
This suggests that we do the same thing at Everett. Do we do that? Do we flood Everett?
We used to, but
I don't think so.
we haven't in a
No.
while.
This is 2011 data?
Right.
So there's something else going on in Everett. Yeah, we probably ought to look at.
Well, it probably is part of it is to our classroom space that we have
Right.
out there, unless it's exterior.
Are we
have a
making
classroom.
water in the
Why are
classroom?
we using
What's
so
that?
much water?
Are we making water in the classroom? You wouldn't use that amount of water in a school.
No, so I say I don't know that, that's the only other thing we have out there is a classroom, but we don't irrigate. We have irrigation on the fields at Everett, so it could be some of the irrigation purposes, but I don't know
It
exactly.
doesn't make sense that it would be so much more than,
Yeah.
say.
Even
South
West Park. Everett's even more than West Park, almost double West Park.
Yeah. Feels like that might be something to look into.
Mhm.
And then on the gas and electricity at West Park, I only can picture that one little structure that must be very, very warm in the winter months. when
It
we've got
runs
the ice rink.
constantly with the ice rink,
It runs
yeah,
year
because
round.
that's the
It's the
warming.
warming hut.
It's to go in and out, and it's constantly having to work, to keep that cool. It's
So
a
maybe
it's a
there's an
historical
opportunity
building
to
too, so
tighten
it's
up that
very old.
building.
And the door is
Wide open.
always going
Yeah.
Yeah.
open and closed and open and closed, sure.
Yeah, it's an old building. It's just not, there's no energy efficiencies at all, kind of thing, so.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not very well insulated.
mean,
Why
it's-
is the
it's-
building at Waveland a big consumer of power?
Classroom there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Classroom in there?
Daycare.
So
Yeah.
There's air conditioning there.
And a sister uses it in preschool.
And then town line's just hot water. And that consumes more power and it's hardly used.
Well, at Town Line, it's hot water and there's lights. The lights stay on at night too, so that uses up a lot of electricity.
Although you'd assume those are all new fixtures, so they would be low flow, they would be more energy efficient than the other parks, I would
Yeah.
Are they?
presume.
But it's what, got 2 sodium lights that are on the,
No, it's a bank of 4 on each side that we've been requested to have on for the pavilion. It's not all of them, but half of the lights have been requested that we have them on at night for security purposes by our public safety and detour activities there, since it's on such a visible thoroughfare. So
It might be
it's more
worth-
than you'd think, probably.
comparing all of these buildings to each other, because I think the fact that the data shows big outliers. I mean, not sure what the right answer is, but, Everett clearly can't use that much water.
Mhm.
Even if.
Yeah, we'll
you-
take a look at that. Yeah, I don't know why that number is
Particularly
so
if we're
skewed.
paying for it. And there's a water shortage, like we had this summer.
Yeah, I can check.
Is there you suggested LED lighting.
Mhm.
Is there an aesthetic trade-off with LED lighting? Would we be taking a step down if we did something like that?
No, it would be the same intensity. In terms of just cost savings, it's about $25 a year per facility to save. And then the cool thing about these lights is that they last for 50,000 hours compared to your traditional fluorescent light, which only lasts about 2,500 hours. So if you're using that light 8 hours a day, it comes out to like 17 years of life expectancy. So from that, it ends up paying for itself within 5 years, and then you have another 10 years of savings on top of that.
So Chuck, you had mentioned in your presentation some of the hidden improvements that your staff has taken on, and perhaps some of the stuff Tom has shed light on gives you some more ideas on additional things we could do.
Yeah, I would like to further this audit and we can work with Tom a little bit, but yeah, there's a lot of improvements. I'm particularly interested in the some of the landscaping. That's something that I would like to work on in the future, converting areas that don't have to be mowed, because that adds the benefit of not having to mow and maintain turf. Those are certainly things on my radar where we could do it.
Great.
Chuck, what would the feasibility be of having cisterns in various places, like out at the dump or something like that, and using that water? Is that hard?
The
to do?
cisterns, they can be buried. Obviously, it costs more to do it that way. That's typically done.
Hey Chuck,
on new
can you come
construction.
up to the mic?
When you bury them, it's usually easier to do when you first construct the facility. I know at Ryerson Forest Preserve, they have a huge cistern that has been very successful, but it's above ground, and it's a little bit different architecture, but you can do it. You can do some designs that look pretty cool. Whether or not we could work it into our parks would be questionable. Buried is nice, and then you can use that water, and it stays cool.
Are there grants available for those kinds of
Yeah,
things?
there are. There are a lot of grants and initiatives in green infrastructure, it's called. So there's all kinds of things that are available out there to do exactly what Tom's talking about.
Other comments?
You know, the only comment I would make is relative to the water usage. You know, most of that water, it looks like, is going to the West Park skating rink during the winter months, when our water usage isn't nearly the problem that we have in the summer.
Correct.
And you got to pump water out of those tanks, right? So there may be electricity offset on that. So we got to make sure we're balancing this stuff and getting to a true, advantage at the end.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank
Good
you.
work.
Nice stuff, yeah.
Okay, the next item is a spotlight on Kinderhaven from Dr. Penny Robbins.
Dan, for you as our new board member, and Daniel, we try to do a spotlight at each board meeting where we can kind of focus in on the service area that we have that brings our faculty and our staff here, that kind of talks about their services, so.
Great.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm starting my 6th year as the director at Kinderhaven, and I've seen some of you before when I've been here, so I'm excited to talk about Kinderhaven any chance I get. We're based on a philosophy from Reggio Emilia, so we're a Reggio-inspired preschool, which really means that we have a lot of respect for our children, we give them a lot of responsibility, and we look for the community to help support our philosophies with our kids. So a lot of their discovery is done through their own initiative. So what they bring to the classroom is what the teachers then will research and develop with the children. So we follow the children's interests, and we do that through provocations that are brought into the classroom by the teachers and by the kids. So once those are brought in and the kids fire up with some interest, then the teachers will respond with some research and some development of that curriculum with them. Families then are encouraged to take those ideas home with them and also work with the kids through those ideas. So for example, a child might bring in a shell that they found on the beach at some point and want to know more about the shell. So the teachers with the children will then research what type of shell that is, where it came from, what might have developed out of that shell, what other animals might have shells, and the families then are encouraged to help the children discover more about shells. So during that time period while they're studying shells, we might get a whole bunch of different types of shells in the classroom. We have a very well-experienced staff who are very well trained. We have over 70 plus years of teaching experience in our staff, and all of our staff have some type of higher education, whether it's a doctorate, a master's, a bachelor's, or an associate's degree. We have a specific training that we have to go to because we are a Reggio-inspired school, and it's a higher level of teacher training, so it requires us to travel quite a bit for training. Some of us just got back from a trip to Boulder, Colorado, where we were training with one of the best schools in the country on Reggio. The teachers have to have a love of learning, a love of creativity, be spontaneous, and like higher education. So all of our teachers, when they sign on, they know that's what they're signing on for. We're not a prefab curriculum, so our teachers don't plan out a year in August. We really do plan week by week as the kids, as we follow the children's interests. Our core values are that our children always are active participants in the environment in which they're in. So we follow the children's leads. The significance of our environment is that it becomes a second teacher. So the things that we put in our environment, in our classrooms, help our kids grow and develop as learners. So we try constantly to change the environment, to bring new things in. So you might see one week a bowl of goldfish that are brought in, and the next week it might be a bicycle tire. So a lot of it is to try to get the kids to start thinking about the implications of the items that are brought into the classroom. The teachers and parents work closely together, and all of our parents volunteer in some fashion in our classroom. So our working parents are called our at-home assistants, so they may take projects home to work on them. But we have a wide variety of ways that parents volunteer through healthy eating initiatives in which the parents come in once a month to teach the kids things about health and nutrition, or our parents who come in and play games with the kids or read. So we have a variety of ways that the parents are involved. We always say there's never a parent that doesn't have a talent that we won't have. So one parent came to me and said, I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to do anything with kids. I don't know. I can work with my kid. I don't know how to. We found out that she played the bagpipes, which was fantastic. Our kids loved that. So we came in, she played the bagpipes, and we did a whole project on Scotland. So it was very, very interesting for everybody. We also have a process of documentation that goes on all of our walls in the classroom. So that's through dialogue with the kids. So you'll see teachers carrying notebooks around with them because they ask the kids questions. They take pictures of the kids in process of learning, and then those are what's posted on our walls as a way for the kids to make their learning visible to them. So they'll look at a picture and say, oh, I remember that's when we were studying sewers, which we spent a whole long time on. I don't know why they were fascinated with sewers, but I learned a great deal about sewers. Let me just say that. Let's see. Inside of our classroom, you'll see it's set up, Reggio classrooms are set up to be comfortable, warm environments that look a little bit like their home. Our class, because we're only in one classroom, we share it with the 3 classes, so we aren't as able to spread out as we'd like to. But you'll see comfortable chairs, house lamps, tables. We soften the lights that we have when they're fluorescent lights. We try to soften them a little bit. The kids are involved in home projects that come into the classroom, usually at the beginning of the year. We've had mobiles in the past, which each family has made. This year it's going to be something a little different. But you'll see all of these setups within our classroom situation. And again, we change those out as well. So if the kids are interested in postal services, you might see it like the teachers bring in things and create a postal service within the classroom setting. One of the things that we're most excited about is our annual art show. And if you haven't had a chance to come, I would urge you to come to our annual art show. It's usually in the spring, and it is focused on the children's work. Each child has at least 4 to 5 pieces of art that goes on display, and we try to make it as much as an art gallery opening as possible. We have an art director that focuses mainly on artists, so particular artists and particular techniques are taught to all the different kids. Our oldest class, which is our 4 or 5-year-olds this year, focused on Dale Chihuly, which they absolutely loved Dale Chihuly. So they did all types of different, as you'll see in the brochure that I gave you, all types of different mimics of Dale Chihuly's work, including then doing portraits of Dale Chihuly, which we sent to him recently. And this was also, we put this up, these are always in Croya, so we share that space with Croya, and they're very excited to have us there. So you'll see the different displays that are up in Croya for a whole afternoon. So the kids come and there's activities for them to do, interactive activities that are usually done through high school volunteers that we get, or college volunteers. So the kids will get to participate, and then they'll also get to show their parents their artwork, which is the most important part of their day there. A huge component to Kinderhaven is what we call our compassion directives. I initiated this 5 years ago, and it's very important to me, so it's become important as we develop the school, and it goes right along with the Reggio philosophy nicely, that we believe that children have rights, but with those rights come responsibilities. And part of the responsibilities is to learn how to give back to the greater world. So we teach children from the time they're the 2.5-year-olds when they enter the program how to respect one another's differences, how to talk and solve problems, and then we start teaching them what we call the compassion projects. So out of their own projects, we develop compassion projects, ways that they can give back. So our compassion projects have ranged in great ways over the times, from small to big, and we'll talk a little bit about those in the next slide. But basically, we want to teach kids that helping others also helps themselves, so that we can have a mutual relationship with that. And we have the Benny Waters Kindness Award, which is given in honor of Benny Waters, who is a little boy from our community that passed away at the age of 5 from a brain tumor. And he went to our school and was extremely compassionate and kind, and the children learned a great deal about how to help and support ill children. And so we have kind of a policy in our school where we try to celebrate the differences that each of us brings. So through the Benny Waters Kindness Award, 2 children are chosen by their own classmates through what they call kindness points. So kids give kindness points to one another throughout the year, and the ones at the end of the year with the most kindness points will receive the Benny Waters Kindness Award, which Benny's mom comes in and gives them big golden spoons, and they have a nice little presentation. Some of the projects that we've done over the years is like during a project where the kids were studying dogs in particular. They found out there were some homeless dogs, and they wanted to know how they could help the homeless dogs. So we had somebody come in from Save a Pet, talked a little bit about their adoption policies and the things that they needed, and the kids had a bake sale, and they also sold their drawings to buy materials for Save a Pet. So they bought chew bones and paper towels and things like that they needed. This last year, we had several events. One was a food drive that the city participated in, and they had set the goal at 1,000 pounds, and they raised 1,100 pounds of food, and then some of the children were able to distribute that to the Holy Family Pantry in Waukegan. It's important for us that they see the work that they do and the benefit that goes into the communities that they serve. We've also had an art supply collection where the children, because their interest in Dale Chihuly, they were looking at all the supplies that were needed to go into some of these projects they did. And a couple of the kids had decided that they were very lucky that they had all these supplies and that other children may not. So they determined at the art show that they would collect art supplies for people to get in, since there was no admission fee. So they sat by the door and collected art supplies. And we ended up with 4 large bins that were given to the Waukegan Art Bus, which is a free service that goes around the city of Waukegan and stops at different places, and kids can come in and do art projects. This year we have 2 projects that we're starting, that were started during the summer, and those projects are headed by a junior in high school girl, or sophomore, in high school girl. who is working with me to develop 2 family, what she wants to do is family compassion projects that would be long-term for these families. And one is a free breakfast program on Saturdays in Waukegan, and another is called the Little Free Library Program that she's starting. And she's already, we're doing some research now, and she's met with some of the important people that we need to meet with in Waukegan, and she's met with some of the families here, and we have a really good backing of these projects. So the kids will be involved with them from the ground up this year. We also have enhanced learning projects that we've instituted in the last couple of years, and one is called the Take Two program, and that program just increases a day for some of our older children. So it's an additional class that they can take that very much mimics their own classroom. This summer we added what we call Baby Regio, because the Regio experience usually starts as infants and goes through. So we wanted to see if we could like start classes, not daycare, but actual interactive classes for this. And we had some really great interest and really fantastic classes. So those will be offered again in the fall. And then we have a class called Mini Explorers that's an additional class as well, where kids learn a little bit about cultures and geography and landscape and all those types of things of different areas. We also have a lot of community involvement that we're very excited about. Part of the Regio, like I said, is that the community supports their programs. And so we've tried to reach out to the community, and the community has reached right back. So we're very excited about that. We've worked with the Rotary Club. We've worked with Lake Forest Bank and Trust. And we have the fire department, the police department, the post office, Egg Harbor, several of the businesses, a library, where we've had our projects displayed, or they've let our kids come in and experience hands-on, work like within kitchens or post office things that have been very exciting for the children. So we hope to continue that progression as well. And we're involving a lot of the high school kids in volunteering, to do projects with our children and sometimes mentoring our children. You can see by the numbers, we get better and better every year, and we're very excited about that. We filled this year within our first day of new registration. And when we surveyed a sample of the new parents that are coming this year about why they want to be a part of Kinderhaven, the vast majority of those that were surveyed said they like the emphasis on character building and compassion, creativity, and in-depth learning. So those are kind of the areas that we also are very proud of and work very hard to achieve. Because we feel that people can take their children anywhere in Lake Forest for a good, solid preschool education. So we wanted to add some layers to that to make our program that much better. We also have a very dynamic parent board, which we're very excited about. They are really a force for our PR. And they dream up great, fantastic ideas for us. They do a lot of fundraising for us, a lot of recruitment. Their contributions have gotten us a documentation station, brand new computers. They have paid for some of our trainings because they're very expensive for us to go get these trainings. They've helped pay for the mural that's on our wall. So if you haven't seen it, I hope that you will come out and see that. It's beautiful. And they're just very much behind the efforts that we're putting forth at the school. So we're very excited to have them. And I guess that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm kind of embarrassed to say I knew there was something back there, but I wasn't exactly sure what it was. So from 2.5 to 5, right, and it's all day.
It's half day.
Half day.
Yeah,
okay.
part day. Yeah.
And as in terms of community resource, is the tuition, what is the tuition?
The tuition's comparable with all the other preschools in town. Yeah, so it depends on which class, like which age group, because you add a half hour in a day for each class period that you go up. So the youngest kids go 2 days a week, 2 hours, and it's 2.5 hours for 3 days, and then 3 hours for 4 days.
And in terms of sort of your admission policy, to the extent a preschool has an admission policy, is it, residents and employees are given preference over, say, non-residents, or how does that work?
Yes, residents have the first opportunity. Returning students have the first opportunity, then residents, then non-residents.
Are there any non-residents now?
Yes, yeah. For next year, I think we have one non-resident. But they line up pretty early. They were there like at 4 a.m. this year, so it went early, yeah.
Well, congratulations. It looks like
Thank you.
a lot of progress, and you obviously have a great deal of passion for what you do, and that's terrific, because
Thank you.
that's what we need.
Love it.
Definitely
Yeah,
shows.
that's wonderful. I wonder, and it may be a question that's more involved than we can even answer here, but I'm curious as to how you think about Kinderhaven in the context of all the other preschools in town, and what are how are you positioning, Kinderhaven to sort of fill a gap where maybe no other school is providing that service, or how do you think about what it is that you're really doing that's different and unique? And it sounds like there are a number of things, so I'm just interested in your own words how you might characterize that.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that we do that are different. I think one of the parents has kind of said it best, that she went to a lot of different preschools before she came to ours. And she was watching one preschool in particular that she was talking about do a project on like hibernation. And she said it was a really quick half-hour project where they got coloring sheets of brown bear, where they read the book Brown Bear, and they were given brown crayons to color the brown bear in the cave. And that was the end of that hibernation. At Kinderhaven, we happened to be doing the same thing with a group of kids on hibernation. They had built a huge papier-mâché cave. They had put in things that they thought they were going to need for hibernation. They had looked at bears and how bears have fat that's accumulated on them for hibernation, and they were looking at the percentage of how they would lose the fat over the period of time. They had looked at other animals that were hibernating, and all total, like, that project took about 7 weeks for those kids to explore, not a half hour with a brown crayon. So that's one way. I mean, I think that we do a lot of in-depth exploration where the kids actually get to find out for themselves how things work. The other thing is, I think that our emphasis on art and art techniques versus crafts and craft projects makes us a little bit different. So the kids come out looking like artists and feeling like artists, that they actually can accomplish, some of these great works of art that they work on. And it's really exciting to watch. And I think the last thing then would be the compassion projects. The fact that we emphasize the importance of our children being connected to a greater world, and that there's a responsibility that comes from that. And they take that responsibility seriously. And if they followed the program through 3 years, it's really amazing. And I think Sally and Joe in particular can probably attest to this. You'll see these kids take ownership of things. So, a child will come in and say, you know what I saw the other day? I saw a dog get hit by a car. Why would a dog get hit by a car? What can we do not to have that dog, have dogs get hit by cars? And the kids will brainstorm and try to figure out ways that they can help. Can they write letters? Can they talk to people? Can they, raise money to tag dogs? What can they do? So that's the difference. So when these 4 and 5-year-olds come into that class after 3 years, they're ready to start tackling problems and solving them and coming up with solutions to them. And even though, as adults we see this as a small scale thing, to them it's huge. And they realize that they can make a difference in the world. And that's what we want to see. And I think that's one of the things that makes us different.
One follow-up, which is, we now have in the neighborhood of 60 students, and which is up quite a bit from where you were even 2-3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, what's our physical limit, and what's your vision for that?
We are beyond our physical limit. I mean, we are capped at what we are capped at is what we're capped at because of our space.
So if you had more capacity, there would be more students who could.
There would definitely be more students, as you can see with the waiting list this year, and that waiting list that he has now has gone down because, as people know they're not getting in, they're finding other schools. We could have probably done another class for each one of our class groups.
So that would have been how much?
We would have probably been close to, I would say, 100 students instead of 60.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Dr. Robbins, does the program break even or make money?
Yes, yeah. For the
So it
last
pays
cou-
for itself?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
And I think with the help of the parent board, we've been able to really, I think, achieve more of that because the parent board has been able to absorb some of the costs of costly trainings that we've had to, go to.
Other
Any other
comments?
questions?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is Director's Report from Mary.
I thought I would begin this evening with just a brief touch upon the festival and fireworks and our beach bash. It seems like, to me anyhow, they were a really long time ago, but they really weren't. But did want to just say a lot of thank yous to our foundation who runs the festival and fireworks. It was an outstanding evening. I don't know how many of you were there. I was busy in and out with a lot of cash duties that night and other duties, but it was a wonderful evening. We did have our first fireworks show shot from Untwensia, which really allowed us to expand the grounds for hosting the event at Deerpath Park. I think it went really well. Rick Amos chairs that for the foundation, and he just had the entertainment was great. We thank Levels because they were one of the food vendors that came out for another year with us, and just all the sponsors and the donors that we had for it. They're still finishing financials, so no, I can't share with what they made, but we do feel it will exceed what they did last year. And we're estimating probably about this time about 10,000 people in attendance. So again, a really good crowd. We did have the high heat early in the day. So we saw the crowds kind of move into the park a little later this year, around 7:30. It picked up, and then it really was full. And so I think if we'd had even better weather earlier, we would have had a huge crowd for this 4th of July. But everything went really well. A lot of good collaboration amongst departments with the foundation, with Untwensia, and I can't thank enough people that all participated in that event. So it was a financial success. I know that we'll see if monies come back from the foundation to some of their obligations that they have for us with capital. And I'm hoping, and Steve, you might know differently, whether we'll have that number for our September meeting, but shortly thereafter, I would think we'd have a better sense of it.
We should have a sense, we should have a good sense in September. Just to echo what you were saying about the generosity of Untwensia Club, that made, I think, almost the biggest difference this year because 10,000 or so people felt like a lot fewer. It felt very comfortable. You could move around, and it just seemed as speaking from the standpoint of someone who was there. I mean, it was a lot better, frankly, than it's ever been. And I think I know it was a big give for the club, and at least from my perspective and from those who I was with, it was a significant thing.
Well, I think the enhancement for safety, for all of us to be able to take a deep breath because we didn't have the fireworks stage so close to where all the participants were, and the shifting of the winds and having to worry with the proximity of that to where actual people for the event was. I think our public safety and all the Parks and Rec staff, et cetera, everyone who's involved with how that all works, it really gave us that breathing room to be a safer event, but also an expanded event. So it was really went well, I thought. So.
Mary, to that point, I know in the past we've had issues with debris from the fireworks landing in people's yards. Given the new location and the way the winds were that night, did we have any of those issues this year?
We didn't. They had very little debris to the ground. Part of that was they could shoot it from the height. It had longer distances to burn out before it would come to the ground. It wasn't trapped in trees and some things like that. So Untwensia had very little cleanup. They did have a little bit of debris that caught and went towards their building, and they had some tent awnings that are out on their patio, and it burnt a couple small holes in that. A little learning curve for all of us is to make sure those are watered down that evening, or they can actually take them down and we can assist them with that. But they overall, that was very minor, and they were very happy with how everything went, and I think that they're interested in continuing that partnership with us.
That's great.
So,
that is great, yeah.
It's a great event.
And the second item was the beach bash, which was at the end of July, and Jeff Waite, who's here, helped organize all that on behalf of the community, and it was a great 3 days. The weather was fantastic, though we did have a little wind the first night, so the movie screen went from gigantic down to smaller and then smaller and smaller as they tried to keep it all anchored. But it was a wonderful weekend, and we had events all weekend long. Saturday we started with some sand sculpture and kids activities and musical entertainment and just really a whole variety of activities. And then on Sunday, again, more musical entertainment. We had a coho fishing both days to start the day. We had the founder celebration Sunday afternoon, which I thought was really nice. Curt and others were there for that. And it was, for me, I really enjoyed it because a lot of residents who were around back then did come to that celebration and chatted with us or shared their stories of the construction of the beach. And one gentleman in particular got up and shared the story of a resident who was on the committee at the time, and she said, well, if we put a playground in the sand for the children are going to come. We don't want that. And they said, so there's just interesting twists, anytime you do new things or develop things, there's different perspectives of it. But it was really a nice event. The staff did put together a historical photo board, which was really interesting to look at, that showed the beach from the, early 30s on till today. So you could see really in the 80s when that erosion issue had gotten so bad what the beach looked like compared to today. And it really does, to me, just say what visionary leadership was happening back then and to create that beach and what a tremendous asset it is today. It's hard to even envision not having it now that the community enjoys it so much. So I thought it was a great weekend. Jeff and the whole rec department and the parks crew worked really hard all weekend long, and it was just a steady flow of residents enjoying themselves, and I thought everything went really well. So I don't know if any of you had any thoughts or comments on that, but we thought it was a great celebration. And then the next item here, I'm going to actually have Jeff Waite come up and just give you an update. We had promised throughout the season here with the golf course just to give you some updates. We won't spend a lot of time. We give you a very detailed report that came out. Jeff is just going to highlight a couple things. I guess overall I can say that we're feeling very positive about the changes we made at the golf course, and the financial picture right now is good, even given a drought in our prime months. So, I'll let Jeff.
Good evening. This is the financial summary for the first quarter, and we're going to highlight memberships, grounds, revenue, and expenses. Just to let you know that city staff has worked very collaboratively and extensively with Kemper Sports Management and the Golf Committee to put in place some financial stability to the course, grow some rounds, make sure that Deerpath gets on a firm financial foundation. Weather played a big factor this year, just like last year. Last June, we had 2 significant storms in June, which significantly impacted financially the golf course. This year, we had heat. Despite these hurdles, the total revenue for the end of the first quarter is only $13 short of budget. We can thank lessons and merchandise for that offset. Total expenses are tracking below budget, approximately 30, but on average 36% for all areas except for maintenance, and that is 2 driving factors for that would be water and chemicals. Even though that we need a lot of water, we're under a water restriction, we still use a lot of water. We also had some maintenance issues with the irrigation system, in which we had 4 blowouts of the irrigation, which did impact our water usage. And then when we don't use water, we have to use chemicals to keep turf grass alive. When we have a lot of heat, we get disease. So one thing led to another. It just kind of compounded each other. We have done numerous marketing efforts that will be fully evaluated this fall for their effectiveness. And we also just need a little bit more of the fiscal year to be completed to see how well they have been performing. But 2 significant promotions that we started in July was the annual pass holder test drive, which we cut down the individual membership by 55% to see if we can get some memberships that way, which we unfortunately did not see. For July, at the beginning of July, we had 7 days of 90-plus weather, so we knew that we were going to lose some rounds. Rick Walrath, the general manager, and I knew that. We were like, okay, we're going to have to do something to make that up, so we implemented a beat the heat green fee sale. So for $39 on the weekdays, $49 on the weekends, you can come out and play a round of golf, which we did see a lot of traction with that, especially with our daily fee, regular users of our daily fees. We also, at the end of July, we contracted with Golf Now, which is owned by NBC, to get more word out about Deerpath. So it's a barter system. We give up one tee time and for them to sell and keep that profit, and we get their access to their database. So we're seeing a lot of good return on that. I think the last time I talked to Rick, for that one tee time, we were getting 6 to 8 back. So it's been really beneficial to us, and we're really excited about continuing that relationship in the future. Memberships are below. We've talked about this back in May, that we're below. We set a target of 400 memberships. We are at 398 right now, but the bulk of that coming from some partial memberships that we sold with the Lake Forest Country Day School. The general manager and Richard Franklin got together and came up with this package to present to the Country Age School, in which a portion of this of their package would be a half membership, and then the other half of their fee would be for lessons. So we did see a lot of gain in our junior memberships. We do have some coming in right now. We have Lake Forest Academy, that's their golf team's going to be coming in. They're going to be doing, again, some additional half memberships. Talking with Richard and Rick this morning, we are going to make sure that we continue on with Lake Forest Country Day School and offering that package again next year. So we're going to see more revenue coming in. We also have the 2013 spring membership drive still yet coming. So if we do as well as we did last year, we're going to really cut down significantly on what the deficit for memberships. Rounds. We set a goal of 32,000 rounds for this year, and currently we're at 13,503, which is 42% of the budgeted number. With the unseasonably warm May that we had, the first quarter started out really well. And then end of June, beginning of July with the heat, we really saw that significant decrease in that. And then when at the end of July, it really kind of put a damper on rounds. Just to give you a little bit more, we had the first 7 days above 90 degrees, the last 15 days above 90 degrees. And no one wants to go out golfing when it's 90 degrees. But we also had 4 rain days, so we had 61% of July adversely affected by weather conditions. Revenue is currently 59% of budget, and we're on pace to exceed projections. Again, that's lessons revenue for that really kind of helped drive that, as well as memberships. Richard's expanding his fall offering, extending his junior camp into a junior after-school program. So we're going to see some more revenue coming in from his lessons. And again, he's going to offer more classes or targeting those juniors in the springtime. So we're going to see a lot better improvement on revenue for lessons. But currently, he's achieved 143% of what he projected that he was going to be able to bring in. So we've seen. I'm sorry. Sorry, we were about 40. Sorry, I got my notes here for a second. Sorry. Sorry, we've significantly improved our performance over last year, I guess is what I ultimately need to say. Expenses are on track with budget projections, again, with the exception of maintenance because of the water and chemicals. We will diligently look at all expenses to make sure that we're making sure that we're staying within budget. We make sure that we research all vendors to see where we can get the best price, and so that we can help alleviate that. Now, with the extreme heat that we had, we weren't mowing as much because the grass wasn't growing, so we were able to cut back on some staff costs, especially in the overtime areas. So we were able to have a savings that way. And again, this is just the three months of a 12-month budget, so we're going to see a lot more expenses over the course of the year. So we'll monitor those and make sure that we get the best pricing as possible. But I guess overall, the course is on track to meet its financial performance, and if we experience a decent fall and a spring like we had one this year, we're confident that we're going to see a significant improvement over last fiscal year. So, any questions?
Jeff, the package that we are offering the Country Day kids
Yes.
with the half membership, I don't know what a half membership is, in the lessons, I think that's a great idea. Are we also making that available to District 67 kids, Deerpath kids?
We have not. Richard's got a certain capacity that he's being able to teach those, certain kids, and he was able. I don't know if it was Richard approached Country Day School via a parent, but that's how that relationship started. If he's able to expand it, we can certainly look to other entities to offer that to them.
I think it'd be great to offer it to all the kids in the community.
That would be great.
If we have
yes,
capacity.
we're limited by just the facility itself, the
Right.
teaching space that we have, and Richard and his employees. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the policy at the golf course and the rest of the city facilities when there's watering restrictions in place?
We're under the same water restrictions as residents. So we're on an odd even day. We do have the ability to, if we have certain grasses that really don't do well in high heat. So if we're able to go and spritz them, just water them down, get them, cool their temperature down so we don't lose it, we can do that. But basically there were certain days early in the summer that we just couldn't water because of the restrictions. So.
And that is a challenge because of the poana that we have, and weighing that loss of all of our fairway grass and replacing it compared to what the watering issues would be. Obviously, it was a very unique dilemma we were in with the watering. We averaged 2 million gallons a day, and the residents were using 12 million, which really didn't allow our system to keep up. So with better education and keeping from the get-go with odd even days of watering, I think going forward we won't have such severe restrictions to all the areas. So that was Tommy's challenge for sure, because perception was, if I can't water at home, I don't want to see other places be watered. But the financial cost and impact could be quite severe if we aren't allowed to do at least the minimal. So those are the kind of balancing act that we did have this summer. We were really fortunate because we got right to the edge when we got a little rainfall, and it wasn't much, but it was just what we needed. And then we got back on a track of actually getting a rain, and we could get the system balanced again and allow us to do the water. But it's a great segue. Went out in a minute to the deep well discussion, but I'll wait in case there's other questions. So
Do we fertilize through the irrigation system?
No, we do not. We have a sprayer.
Okay, that's something we might take a look at over time, because what that can do is actually it can make the grass more drought tolerant when you microdose over time, as opposed to hitting it with a bigger dose more infrequently.
Okay.
So we can talk about that offline if that's of interest. Not that I don't have any specific suggestions, but I don't think it's that hard to retrofit the system to be able to do it automatically, actually, through the watering system.
Okay, be a great idea. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, as I mentioned, that segues into deep well research that we are currently conducting. This has come up since I've been the director for the last 5 years, and it was before that. I mean, the records that I can find, they first started talking about a possibility of a deep well was back in 2002, and so this has been not obviously a new concept, but there's been different moving pieces to the puzzle, I think, in the last few years, which makes it more desirable to revisit this topic. The Golf Advisory Committee specifically expressed some interest in it, as well as some of the aldermen. So we felt, you know, it is a timing situation to really do a diligent look at this and come up with an answer one way or the other, whether or not this is a direction that the city, you know, should look at or not. Just to give you a little frame of reference, we average right now around $55,000 to $60,000 a year in water costs. That we, you know, purchase the water through the city, and it is a fully treated water. It's got fluoride and everything on our grass. It's, but it is.
Is it purchased at full price or at a discount?
We purchase it at regular rates, yes. And obviously the clubhouse water is a very small portion of it. The majority of our water is for our irrigation purposes. So.
And we need it during the highest peak time when everybody else is using it too. Right?
Yes, exactly. So those are some of the challenges, but with like the expansion of the hospital, they're going to need more water. Other developments in the community are requesting water, drought, and the changing environmental factors. It behooves the city to revisit all of its clients and determine, you know, what is a long-range strategy here for water needs in the community, and what can we look at doing differently. And, you know, it was challenging for us because a lot of the private courses in town are on wells. And so they weren't facing those same kind of watering issues that we were facing as a public course. So based on that, this past summer in July, we put together this timeline that I thought I would share with you and just kind of briefly cover it. But what we wanted to do was break this down into some chunks that we can come back then with a report to the park board, and then also to city council with some recommendations. But we have been working and have completed the first section that was due by August 15th, which was we've got our 5-year history of our water usage broken down by the types of needs of water at the course. We have a 5-year history of our expenses that we've been doing. We have been pulling together all of our course data. As you recall, back in 2005, we did do a new irrigation system, new ponds and drainage, and a lot of improvements there for our wetlands. So we've been pulling all of that data so we know exactly the existing as-built conditions at the course currently, as well as the configuration that we have for our existing irrigation systems, because we'll need that in order to be able to provide that data to potential well companies to give us the right pricing. And then we also have been verifying the feasibility of doing a well, because the county had begun to restrict some of those, a little bit of concern of the aquifers and where wells were, but we have found that we are still able to get a well permit at this point in time, and that the depth of our well and the location of our well doesn't appear to be of significant concern. So that's you know, just an initial investigation we looked at. And then the finance department has been looking at funding mechanisms. You know, what are the city's resource, whether those are issued, you know, existing debt, is it refinancing something, is it through through our capital funding, what would be some options to look at on how we could possibly fund a well improvement. And the well costs have varied. We just have had rough estimates in the past, and I've heard anything from $250,000 to $800,000. So we really need to get the cost clearly identified, because that's a big swing, as you can imagine. So we do really want to continue that diligence. So in this next month, we're looking at what are the impacts to the water fund and timing considerations, looking at all the variables that I already mentioned that are happening in the community, whether it's the hospital or whether or not it's the golf course or other needs here in town. The other thing I'll mention to you is that there is some possibility that underpass on 41, they are looking at addressing that station, that pump station that they have right there, and there is some possible interest in doing something different with that 17th green and fairway on the golf course, and maybe putting some extra detention capacity there. and that could allow us to tie in some projects nicely or not. That's just, you know, kind of an informational thing we're still working through right now. But they've had that on the radar for a long time, and they just kept postponing it, and now they're kind of up against the deadline that they need to do something there. So I think those conversations will really heat up this fall, and we'll have some good sense of that. But we need to do some engineering studies, as I mentioned, about where we would place it on the course, get the most advantageous coverage and, you know, system capacities and that kind of thing. And then also developing what the specs need to be so we can get apples to apples pricing from our bidders that would be interested in doing this project. And then, of course, that would also give us the cost estimates. So our hope is by mid-October, we could come back with a report for you on what that would look like, and verify, you know, if the park board has an interest in having that conversation or looking at a well, then beginning that conversation with the city council as far as what that would do as far as a 5-year capital improvement plan. We lay that out, whether or not that's rolled into part of the golf course, if it's a different funding mechanism, and what that might look like and what the options would be. And then we would really from there be able to decide, is this a year from now, is it 3 years from now? So then we could put timelines to all of it and get a sense of when the work could potentially be done and what those impacts would have in the city's overall scheme of things. So this is kind of where we're headed right now. A lot of good work going on. Finance department and Public Works are working with our department to work on the various components of this, whether it's the engineering need aspect of it or whether it's the financing packages of it, just so that we can begin to come back with a real comprehensive report back for the park board. So,
Are there any other options being considered besides a well?
well, there was a suggestion at one point of bringing a line straight from Lake Michigan all the way to the golf course. We felt that would be a little difficult, but we have had that one. But
I mean, what about the city's water department expanding its capacity? Because when the water problem happened, a third of the water treatment plant was down for broken parts. So there's more capacity within the water treatment plant. Is that a better expenditure of city money than a well?
I don't know of those situations, but I could certainly ask. I'm not familiar with, you know,
I don't know either. I mean, it's,
yeah. Well,
or
sure.
ponds, you know, I mean, we use 2 million gallons during the fall and the wintertime, 12 million gallons a day in the summertime. Could water storage be put in ponds and lakes that could be created for use as irrigation when there's excess capacity in the water plant?
And it speaks to what we were discussing earlier too, with cisterns and various other places around the city that we can collect rainwater.
Good idea.
All things to consider.
We'll look at that, definitely. It's good thoughts.
I think it'd be interesting to understand why, you know, the private clubs have done what they've done, you know, with wells, because I suppose they'd be buying the same way we would, and we want arm's length between the golf course and the city. So it may be that we come back. We got to look at all these things, but maybe we come back to a well or some combination of water collection and well.
You mentioned it's been looked at in the past. What were the reasons to not move forward with the well?
Part of it was, and I can only I'm relaying this from what I think was the thing. You know, the rationale was, part of it was that you know, it was a water rate issue. By having the golf course as a big customer, it allowed them to moderate the rates that they charge the residents, you know, in the community for water rates, because we were a large capacity user. It also helped consistency in the water tanks and the amount that they were running through the water plant. So I think those were some of the things, and probably the bigger issue at some point was just coming up with the initial investment to do the well to the point you would get the return on investment when the golf industry started to slide. So I think all of those were all issues at one point in time that had impacts to the decisions on it. But again, we've never fully vetted all of these issues, but I think now it's a good timing to do that. So.
Good.
Yeah, it does feel like it, and it feels like something that maybe even the foundation could play a role in if at some point that, you know, becomes necessary.
Okay, good to know.
I mean, because I think there's a terrific ROI on something like this, right?
Mhm. Okay, anything else on that? Okay. My next item was, I just wanted to give you an update. 2 of our capital projects for this fall was the boat compound resurfacing project and the lakefront revetment wall study. The boat compound resurfacing project will occur sometime after September 24th. We were trying to get through the majority of the significant months of boating season. Those projects will be bid as part of the city's full asphalt projects. We'll get a great price from that perspective. And we'll coordinate that with all the boaters with notices to them, so that we'll put up, fencing areas so that their boats are still available to them down there and they can still launch. They'll just be located on the parking lot somewhere while we do the lot. So they really won't negate their ability to do boating still this fall, and our sailing program, et cetera, will, be able to still operate. The other one was the revetment wall study, and that is all the breakwater walls that created the beach. We have done different studies over at different benchmark milestone years with that. We did one, make sure I pull that out. We did a 10-year beach performance study back in '98. And then in 2001, we did a very much modified just visual analysis study. So we really are due. It was supposed to be done at the 20-year mark, and we're at the 25-year. So we talked about this at the time we prioritized our capital projects this year. But long story is that we are planning to continue to work with Baird and Associates, because they had all the coordinates and all the past analysis and barometric readings, et cetera, file systems on it, and all the past photo files. So it is good to have them continue this process for us, because they have all the original data to it, and their efficiency in getting the work done will be allow us to get the best price and leverage that. So we have been meeting with them. They'll start this fall. We are most likely going to have to bring that back to the park board, though, their contract, as well as to the council, because we do assume it'll be over $20,000 to do that. We did budget $30,000 this year for it. So we're working on that. One of the items that we're adding to the research that has not been done in the past was when we put the 2 million gallon underground storage tank with North Shore Sanitary District. There was a retaining wall put in place. We want to get the visual and the actual soundings data established for that, so we can monitor it as well, as we can make sure if there's anything that starts to happen there, or any basic remedial maintenance work, that we're on top of it, so we don't have any issues with that. So that's kind of a new component that we wanted to put in there. So both those projects will be happening this fall, and we'll be coming back to you with the financial information related to those. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention to the board, I sent out to all of you the subcommittees for the park board. We had those when I first got here. We were pretty active with doing different meetings, but then when we did the ad hoc CIP, which really involved the full board for different projects, we stepped away from that. So this was kind of putting that back in place. We do think it'd be extremely helpful, especially now that we're really making sure that all of our annual fees, golf, fitness, lakefront fees all come before the board for your review and your approval of fees. So that needs to happen this fall in order for us to bring those on to council, as well as finish our budget work for the next fiscal year. But there, as you saw on the list, I won't go through them, all the possible key projects. We've got a variety of good projects this year. Some have already been going, they're ongoing, some will be new. But it's kind of spreading out all the park board into different areas. But I did want the board, and Curt and I talked a little bit when we put this together, was that anytime any board member is welcome to join any of the other subcommittees if you have a particular interest in it. It doesn't mean that you can't be involved in those, but we wanted to kind of carve out, if you would, time commitments for some of these topics with the different boards. And they would be all considered public open meetings, because of the volume of board members that would be participating. So of course the public would be welcome to attend them, and they would be posted when we have those meetings on our city website. So any questions on the Parks Subcommittee? James, I heard from a few of you that it was
I mean,
okay.
Historically, when these committees were active, how often were they meeting?
It was very, just around project time, so I would say maybe 2 or 3 meetings in the fall, maybe 1 in the spring. The one that everybody has participated in the last few years is a committee of the whole meeting for our capital projects, and that will need to happen in late September, early October. But other than that, we've had like the fee meetings for the special facilities. When we had the golf study, we did a little bit more with the golf. So it really is just driven by, it's not every month, it's just really around the project timelines. And if we can bundle topics together to use people's, everyone's time more efficiently, we've been trying to do that too, so. All right, and then I think my last couple things, we are currently underway with our American with Disabilities Act assessment of facilities and property, which was part of a new requirements under the Title II of the Americans with Disability Act. We are working with PHN Architects. We went out for RFP for that, got quotes in for it. They have started with us last month. It was $11,500 project that is being paid for out of the Special Recreation Tax Levy funds, which is a fund that's legally set up to allow us to use that for special need purposes. Currently, we have completed all the evaluations of the facilities except the water plant. That's last one to be done. And they have done all of the parks but Forest Park Beach. So we anticipate that they do have to go back to a few facilities when different questions have come up as they've done each of these audits and do a few more measurements and things like that. They're anticipated to have their final report to us by October 15th, so that most likely what we may need to do is put a placeholder in our CIP that says, ADA improvements and a dollar amount, and then that way once we have the report we can prioritize based on what we think is a placeholder. But they are giving us cost estimates on everything, what they would recommend. They're helping, every facility will be prioritized with the top 5 items that they would recommend that we address, and whether or not it's simple, like one of the items is park benches. I'm learning an awful lot. You think the laws do change and stuff, but I had an elderly person who asked me for a park bench with arms because that really allows them to get leverage to get out of the chair. But majority of people in wheelchairs need benches without arms because they need to bring their wheelchair right up to it. So we need to have a blend of park benches as an example in our park. So some of this we have to do right away. Some of it we can phase in as we replace a park bench. We put in the right bench. So it'll be a report that will give us some guidance, because we'll have to come up with now a transition plan for the city on these improvements that they're going to recommend, because that is part of the requirement, not only doing the audit but coming up with a transition plan of what you'll tackle and when. So they've been great to work with and very helpful as far as explaining what the process is and what they're doing. So I just wanted to make you aware that project is underway as well. And other than that, just to kind of end on a new note, a high note, is we were asked by Susan Kelsey in Economic Development and Bob Kiley and the college to work with them on something that would help the college students who are coming to Lake Forest get to feel more welcome by the community and feel that they right away they had a place that they could come and enjoy. And so we are hosting the first ever freshman welcome party at the beach on August 28th. And so we are expecting around 400 plus college students that afternoon from 6 to 8. Sally and Joe are working on events and activities for them down there. The college is doing a gift to the freshmen that will have a city logo and college logo, kind of gift for them. And we're just going to help introduce them to the beach so they'll get to enjoy that facility and get a good sense that, that they've come to a great community in which to be a part of. And then from there, hopefully, maybe we'll continue to see them, continue to look at some of our services. We had an intern this summer, Chris Way from the college, who developed an internship manual for us as well as our volunteer manual and put the draft of that together. So we're finishing that. But just it was fun talking with him about, what have you learned? And he's a political science major, not a recreation. They don't have a recreation degree, and he said, your department and what Parks and Recreation do is the most you don't recognize, or they're just under the radar of how important they are to the community. He goes, I had no idea all the services that Parks and Recreation and Forestry do in the community. He said the college students, we just take that for granted in so many ways, and I'm sure a lot of the kids and things like that do. So he said, I've come away with a tremendous appreciation and excitement to go back and talk to college kids about how they could be more involved with us in our department, whether it's employment opportunities or internship. And Chuck's done an awful lot with working with the forestry kids and stuff for some of our work too. So I think we're building some really good bridges that is going to be great for us with the college as well. So on August 28th, if you want to see a college party on the beach, come join us. But it should be very fun. We're looking forward to it, and that will hopefully wrap up our summer events, because we've had a lot of them this summer. And so in September meeting, I'll share our October and fall things that are coming up. So, and with that concludes my report. So
Great, thanks, Mary. Other comments by board members? Okay, motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.